I never thought my life would turn into a nightmare. Not the kind you wake up from in the middle of the night, heart pounding, only to realize it was all a dream. No, this was real. Every moment of it. I grew up in a small town, quiet, uneventful, the kind of place where everybody knew each other's business but no one really cared much beyond surface-level politeness. I was in my mid-20s, working a normal 9-to-5 job at an insurance company. My life was straightforward: work, home, weekends with friends or family. Nothing remarkable, nothing extraordinary. It was the kind of place where people locked their doors more out of habit than fear. Crime was rare. The worst thing that happened was usually a stray dog wandering into someone's yard or teenagers pulling pranks late at night. I liked it that way. Safe. Predictable. But sometimes, safe and predictable can lull you into a false sense of security. That's how it started, with small things that didn't make sense but I brushed off. Maybe you've experienced it too, those tiny moments where something feels just a little off, but you convince yourself it's nothing. It was a Tuesday evening when I first noticed something strange. I was driving home from work, just like every day, taking the same route through a stretch of suburban streets lined with identical houses and neatly trimmed lawns. I stopped at a red light near the corner of Maple and Fifth. The street was usually quiet at this time, mostly just me and a few cars heading home. But that evening, I caught sight of a man standing on the sidewalk, about 30 yards away, near a lamppost. He was dressed in dark clothes, his face obscured by a hoodie pulled tight. I thought it was weird because no one ever stood there, especially not just standing still like that, staring down the street. But the light turned green, and I drove on without thinking much about it. The next day, same intersection, same time, and there he was again. Same spot. Same dark hoodie. Just standing, watching. I felt a little chill and slowed my car to look, but when I locked eyes on him, he looked away quickly and disappeared into the shadows between the houses. I told myself it was probably someone waiting for a ride or just passing time. Maybe a jogger who had stopped for a break. Still, it felt off. Over the next few weeks, the sightings grew more frequent. Not just at the intersection but on other parts of my route home. Sometimes I'd see the figure standing silently on the sidewalk. Sometimes sitting in a parked car, engine off, watching. Other times, I'd catch a glimpse of someone walking behind me when I went out to the grocery store late at night, only to disappear when I turned around. I never saw his face clearly. Always the same hoodie, always the same vague posture, silent, still, watching. I tried to shrug it off as paranoia. Maybe I was just imagining things. I hadn't had the best sleep lately, and work was stressful. It made sense that my mind might be playing tricks. But it wasn't just the sightings. My phone started acting weird. Notifications flickering on and off, calls from unknown numbers that went straight to voicemail, strange static sounds during conversations. At first, I blamed it on a glitch. I even got my phone checked. The technician told me everything looked fine, no viruses or spyware. Still, the odd calls kept coming. One night, I stayed late at the office to finish some reports. When I finally left, the parking lot was nearly empty, the only sound was my footsteps echoing between rows of cars. As I unlocked my car door, I noticed something on the ground. A small piece of folded paper, placed neatly beneath my tire. I picked it up with trembling hands and unfolded it. It was a scrap of notebook paper, with a single sentence written in messy, almost childlike handwriting. "I see you." My heart stopped. I scanned the parking lot quickly. No one around. I looked up and down the empty street. Still nothing. I debated calling the police but didn't want to make a big deal out of something that could be a prank. Instead, I locked my doors, got in, and drove home with every sense on edge. The next few nights were torture. I couldn't sleep, couldn't shut my eyes without images flashing in my mind, dark figures lurking outside windows, the sound of footsteps pacing outside my bedroom door. I started leaving the lights on. I installed extra locks. I told my closest friends what was happening, but they laughed it off, saying I was just stressed. One friend even joked, "Maybe you have a stalker. Better start carrying pepper spray." At first, I smiled and agreed, but deep down, I knew this wasn't a joke. One morning, I woke to find my front door unlocked. I was certain I had locked it before bed. No signs of forced entry, no damage. Just unlocked. I checked inside, everything seemed normal, but my gut told me something was wrong. That day at work, I was distracted, jumpy. I found myself scanning every corner of the office, double-checking doors and windows. Later that evening, I received a message on my phone from an unknown number. "We're closer than you think." Panic surged through me. I showed it to a coworker, who told me to call the police. I went to the police station and reported everything, the sightings, the notes, the messages. The officer was polite but skeptical. "Without evidence, there's not much we can do. Could be a prankster," he said. I felt dismissed, but what could I do? The officer did suggest I install security cameras, which I did the next day. I set up cameras covering the front door, the driveway, and the street. The first few days of footage showed nothing unusual. Then, one night, at 2:37 a.m., the front door camera caught someone standing just beyond the porch light's reach. A tall figure, motionless, hooded, just like the man I had seen before. The footage was grainy, but the presence was undeniable. I froze watching it. Then, a chilling detail appeared. The figure raised a hand, slowly, deliberately, and pointed directly at the camera. Watching the footage from that night left me rattled in a way I had never been before. That figure, so deliberate, so unyielding, was no random passerby. He knew I had cameras. He knew I was watching. For a few days after, the strange sighting slowed down. Maybe the cameras scared him off, or maybe he was just biding his time. I tried to convince myself I was safe. But deep down, I knew that was wishful thinking. The calls that once were just static or silence grew more disturbing. One night, around midnight, my phone rang again. I almost didn't answer. Something made me pick it up. There was no voice, only a faint breathing. Slow, deliberate breaths. I tried to speak, but there was no response. Then, the sound of shuffling footsteps, faint but unmistakable, growing louder, closer. I hung up immediately and sat frozen, heart pounding, convinced someone was outside my door. I checked. No one was there. Just the cold, empty night and the quiet hum of streetlights. I called a friend to come over. He arrived within the hour and insisted on staying the night. Having someone there helped, but I still felt watched. Every creak of the house, every shadow, made my skin crawl. In the following weeks, the pattern emerged. The man showed up only at night, never during the day. I would see the dark figure lurking near the edge of streetlights or standing by trees where the light didn't reach. Always watching. Always silent. I started changing my routine, taking different routes home, staying with friends overnight, even skipping some workdays, but he adapted. No matter where I went, the figure was there. One morning, I found something new. On my doorstep, a small item, my house key. I was certain I had never lost it. I had no explanation how it ended up there. Panic set in immediately. How had he gotten it? Had he been inside my house when I was asleep? Was he still inside? I checked every lock, every window, twice over. Nothing seemed disturbed. This time, I called the police again and told them about the key. The officer who came was more serious. "We need to check your place for evidence," he said. They dusted for prints and looked for signs of entry. There was none. I was both relieved and terrified. I began to withdraw. I stopped answering my phone except for close friends. I moved my bed into the living room, near the windows with a better view of the street. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. The figure never came into the house, but he was always outside, always there. One morning, taped to my windshield was another note. "Why do you run?" The handwriting was the same as before, sloppy, uneven, like someone writing with shaking hands. I felt like I was being toyed with. I started researching stalking behaviors online, reading stories that sounded eerily like mine. Most stalkers seek control, power, or revenge. But I had no idea why I was targeted. No enemies, no fights, no threats. One night, while lying awake, I heard the faintest sound outside. Scraping. Like nails or a tool dragging slowly along my front door. I grabbed a kitchen knife and crept to the window. There he was. Standing in the shadows, right in front of my door. I couldn't see his face, but I could feel his gaze burning into me. I backed away quietly and called 911. They arrived within minutes. The figure was gone when they got there. The officers searched the neighborhood but found nothing. They told me to stay at a friend's place for a few days. I did. For a week, I stayed with a friend in a neighboring town. The feeling of safety was strange. But every night, I checked my phone anxiously. No messages, no calls, no notes. After that week, I returned home. For a few days, it was quiet. Maybe he had given up. Maybe he was gone. But then I received the final message, the one that truly broke me. It came as a text. I'm inside. When I read those words, I'm inside. Everything inside me went cold. My fingers trembled as I stared at the screen, rereading the message over and over, hoping it was some kind of cruel mistake or a prank. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I immediately called the police, but the line kept ringing. I tried again. And again. No answer. My heart pounded so loud it felt like it might burst. I grabbed my phone and rushed outside, half expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows, waiting. But the street was empty. Quiet. Almost too quiet. I went back inside, locking every door and window behind me, double-checking every bolt. I stayed crouched on the floor, clutching my phone, too scared to move, too scared to call anyone else. Hours passed. The police never came. I began searching the house, methodically, room by room, every crevice, every closet. No one. Nothing out of place. The silence was suffocating. Then I noticed something. A faint smell, something metallic and sharp, like iron mixed with something organic. It was coming from the basement. I rarely went down there. The basement was unfinished, cold, and dark, mostly used for storage. I hesitated at the top of the stairs, the musty air rising like a warning. I turned on the light and slowly descended. The smell grew stronger. Then I saw it. In the corner, just barely visible in the dim light, was a shallow hole dug into the dirt floor. Inside, wrapped carefully in plastic bags, were several items. My wallet. My phone charger. My keys. Pieces of my life, taken without my knowledge. It was clear now. He had been inside my home, taking things, watching, waiting. The man wasn't just stalking me. He was invading every part of my life. He knew my routines, my habits, my every move. The person wasn't random. He was watching. Always watching. I called my family and closest friends, telling them what was happening. Some believed me. Others thought I was paranoid. The police said they couldn't do much without catching him in the act. I felt trapped. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I installed more cameras, motion detectors, and even a security alarm. I carried pepper spray and a knife wherever I went. Every sound, every shadow, every stranger's glance made me flinch. One night, around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps on the porch. My heart stopped. I grabbed my knife and slowly moved toward the door. The porch light flickered, then steadied. I peered through the peephole. There he was. The man in the hoodie. Standing motionless, staring right at the door. I opened the door a crack. "Who are you? What do you want?" I demanded, voice shaking. He said nothing. Just lifted his head slightly, revealing a pale, gaunt face, tired eyes that held no emotion. He stepped back into the shadows and vanished. The next day, the police found traces of someone living in a hidden crawlspace beneath my house, an area I didn't even know existed. They arrested the man. He was a drifter with a long criminal history, break-ins, stalking, assault. It took months for me to feel safe again. The experience changed me. I learned that evil isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes, it's a silent shadow lurking just beyond the light. And sometimes, It's closer than you think.